Here we are at the new excavation at Sayburch. But look at this, my God, this is incredible. Sayburch is an 11,000-year-old site. This is the main excavation area now. They've moved out from the house, from the village area, moved down to the field here. And some remarkable things can be seen. You've got a hold stone there with interesting features and carvings on it. You've got a whole area over there where all the roofs are. So this one you can see the V-neck and the arms. Are they actually arms coming around? That is very unusual. So you've got a circular enclosure there. You've got another T-pillar down there, another major T-pillar there. That could be the one we looked at. So this again is all the new excavation here. Even got a piece just lying on the ground here. Giant stones just lying around, all these enclosures. Another massive T-pillar there. Absolutely amazing. Look, giant T-pillars. Wow, it's amazing. This is all open now. More enclosures, more T-pillars here. So we're going to start off having a look at a site called Sayburc, which is a few miles east of Göbekli Tepe. The reason we want to start here is because at the very end of September 2023, we had a chance to visit it and we saw some brand new discoveries exposed in the excavation there. Now we know about the main panel, the narrative panel that's been discovered there, and the beautiful rock cut architecture and the carvings, but there's much more coming out of the ground at this particular site. So this is a scan of the Sayburc panel, the potentially elliptical enclosure, although we've been discussing this as possible different geometries. And on the left there, we have the strange carving of like the sort of serpent head carved on the ground at Sayburc. And we have other angles on it here. You can kind of get a sense of what's going on in this 3D way, which I think is quite compelling. But Sayburc is an absolutely fascinating site. It's thought to date back to at least 11,000 years ago. It's got 3D relief carvings of these leopards and this gentleman holding his part, and another guy jumping up and down with an auroch or a bull. This is the strange carving once again that's actually on the sort of bedrock just outside the front. And there's a whole lot going on here, but this is what's been known about for a while, all these parts of the site, including this stone here, which JJ and I found to have carvings on it, on the side of it, the arms and the hands and so forth. But more recently, in late September 2023, myself and Andrew and our group, including JJ, got a chance to actually visit the site. But a whole other area was being excavated. Now, we saw some of this when we went in May, but you can see here that it's been filled in. There's multiple T-pillars and enclosures and everything else. But as you keep walking further away from what the main area where the panel, where the rock cut enclosure is, as the direction the people in the group here are walking in, we came across these two, what looked like two blocks coming out of the ground. Now, this was in like mid-September last year, and we were really intrigued by this. We thought maybe this was a porthole stone, maybe this was a doorway, maybe it was a dromos stone like we see at Göbekli Tepe. And then when we went there a couple of weeks later, after the tour, it had been exposed, and there's me getting all excited pointing at it. And you can see some really interesting stuff in this whole area here.
We're looking at the new excavations that have taken place over the last year or so, and some of it incredibly recently. And what I'm looking at here is very clearly the entranceway into either an enclosure or a dromos, like a corridor that would lead into a enclosure. And this is just enormous. Not only is it cut and dressed, but it's also geometrically pretty perfect, and it's almost beyond what you need for a simple door. It's arguably one of the largest monuments that's been found at the site so far, and it just begs the question of what else lies beneath this rubble that you see everywhere, and is being exposed by the excavations taking place here. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable.
Close up of it's got like a hole carved through it. We've got a nice sunset with the image. I mean, this is pretty massive. It's like what, 7 feet wide, maybe something along those lines. And there's the orientation as well. And me and Andrew, and you can jump in here, Andrew. We were discussing this as a possible porthole stone, or as a possible dromos, or just like a kind of, kind of like a window that we find at these sites. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dromos stone. It's basically the entrance into a passageway that's going to be leading into the actual enclosure itself. I mean, there's a similar one that was found, as you said, at Göbekli Tepe in enclosure C, but that one was not so elaborate as this. I mean, what's so important about this one is that it's beautifully cut and dressed, in a style which you really wouldn't expect until many thousands of years later, in all honesty.
There's quite a few other areas at the site. We noticed this near the entrance to the site when you walk into the new excavation. Notably, it seems to have one stone in the middle. And then we have Andrew standing above this one as well. And this is something that they found over and over again at the site, and this has just come out. It's just been released by the archaeologists like the last week or so, that they're claiming with Sayburch, and I want to get both your feedback on this, is that these are small enclosures with one pillar in the middle. And they say that either side of these, there's domestic buildings all interlinked with these small enclosures, and then some larger enclosures. Then obviously what appears to be the main enclosure with the panel on it and things like this. So we didn't realize at the time, but it's been said now by the archaeologists that these are small enclosures with 7 or 8 stones with one pillar in the middle. And then next to these, we have domestic. And here's another image of one of the central stones with the classic V-neck. But yeah, I don't know what you make of that. This has just come out. I mean, have you got any thoughts about this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, they don't know whether this is domestic or not. I mean, that's just purely a guess. I mean, that's not to say that people weren't, living there, or at least on a temporary basis. But we were discussing this, Deb, myself, and our friends, just a few weeks ago at Göbekli Tepe, and I think it would be better to see these rooms more like hotel rooms as opposed to, permanent dwellings. Would you agree, Deb?
Oh yes. I think, some of the ritual aspects of Sayburch would have been for particular events and particular festivals. So this is almost like, kind of glamping, with kind of like portable ritual enclosures near to where people actually lived and stayed, but on temporary kind of basis for certain times of the year.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree with you. I think we kind of wrote the idea that these were like permanent sites, but not permanent settlements. They were kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that's a good
they
way
feel
of
more
putting it.
like. I mean, they're trying to make out it's the general kind of agenda now to make out these are not temples. These are special buildings, they call. These
Yeah.
are not sacred sites. These are not where people visited at certain times. Yeah, and it just doesn't quite add up. I mean, there's a lot of contradiction going on here, and I find it fascinating. I think the debate is going to go on about this until more excavations done, because you're going to have, places like Göbekli Tepe, you're probably going to have a few people who manage the site, 12,000,
Yeah.
11,000 years ago. So there'll be some people who have to stay there to keep an eye on it. Then the groups would come in for rituals certain times a
Yeah.
year, astronomical time, get involved, do the building, brew loads of beer, things like this. But yeah, so there's a big debate about that. We can get into that a bit later maybe. But I just want to show you a couple more things with Sayburch that we spotted while we were there. And this is kind of exclusive. Some of this hasn't been published that we know of yet. This is one of the strange stones I thought was very, very interesting, with this very strange kind of cupules and shaping on it, not dissimilar to the kind of serpent head we see carved on the bedrock outside the panel enclosure. But what's really interesting, and this is now being put out there by the archaeologists at the site, is that human remains have been found at in one of the enclosures at Sayburch, possibly more. And if you look on the top right there, you can see
Right.
them. I mean, we couldn't quite believe it when we kind of spotted this, and then we've got them here as well, and they seem to be possibly disarticulated. There's like, different parts, and there may be even some kind of covering or kind of linen or something on it as well. We're not sure. More research needs to be done, but I know that very recently the archaeologists really wanted to kind of make it out that this has actually been discovered. This could be a big deal. There could be DNA tests done with it. And we find this in what appears to be one of the kind of more domestic type, I'm not saying they are domestic, but domestic type buildings. Then this isn't a place that appears to have lots of T-pillars and things like that, but who knows, there may be some found within it. We just don't know. So it's all a bit speculative and a bit vague, but the fact is some very important discoveries are starting to be made at Sayburch, and no doubt when we go back there in May and in September, we're going to see more as it unfolds. And so yes, and also there's a report came out, I read from the archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe, that they found more human remains inside kind of fill, especially around the main enclosures that are being excavated there as well. And so more and more human remains do seem to be coming out of the ground here. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the important thing here is the DNA, isn't it? I mean, what's this going to tell us about the origins of Taş Tepeler? I mean, we've speculated that there may well be a connection with people's coming down from the Caucasus, beyond that on the Russian steppe, and obviously as far east eventually as the Ural Mountains and Siberia, Mongolia. So, that's a prediction. But in addition to that, you've got indigenous peoples who would have been here for many thousands of years. You'd have had incoming peoples probably from the Levant, connected with the Natufians there. And something that, myself, Debbie, and I know that you and JJ have been working on, the idea that there's an influence also coming in from the Marmara region of Western Turkey as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. From northwestern Turkey.
Yeah.
But the thing is about this is that the DNA could show anything, because, it might be likely that such a vast area of hunter-gatherer culture would be seen as like the center of the world. I mean, it could have attracted populations from all over to come. So you're not necessarily going to have DNA of a hominid that would be a builder or somebody who started this culture or somebody who's concerned with this culture. It could be a visitor from literally north, south, east, west, to that center. So it's not just going to be clear cut that it's the DNA of a builder.
So yes, Sayburch, I think, is just one of the most important sites coming out of that whole area. I mean, I'm fascinated by the name of it as well, which we kind of discovered when we were on our tour. Actually, we're kind of doing so much trying to work out the name of it, and it kind of means, sign of the zodiac. Say does, and Birch means counting, whereas Birk, BIRC, in Kurdish means watchtower, and there's actually supposed to be a watchtower at the site as well, and it got knocked down like less than 100 years ago or so. And so that's really, I find that little clues like that we find in the place names that I find really intriguing. No doubt more will be discovered, and so we have a whole possibility of trying to understand these place names may have been memories of what went on there.
We are here at the time of the autumn equinox. Very soon all of this will be covered over for another year, and the excavations will resume in 2024, and clearly we'll come back then to see exactly what has been discovered and how far they've got with this incredible series of excavations at just one of the Taş Tepeler sites. And all of this is going on across the entire region. We looked at the excavations at Sefer Tepe, at Karahan Tepe, Göbekli Tepe. We know that there are other Taş Tepeler sites that are also being looked at or will be excavated within the next year or so. And you have to start asking yourself, why so many of these ritual complexes, these settlements, which in many ways adds up to a civilization of the ancients.